Alrighty, guys. Here's another episode of Podward State for years. I'm Matt Paolizzi.
My name's Sam Brungo, and for this episode, we're joined by guest hosts, our hockey beat writer, Acacia Aster Broder, and special guest, former Onward State managing editor, currently writing with Athletic, covering Carolina Hurricanes, Sara Civian. Pretty cool conversation with potentially our biggest alumni here at the blog. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. No, it was cool to finally meet Sarah. We call her Civ over at OS. That's all I've ever known her as, is Civ. But no, it was cool. I've heard about her. Her great writing. I've read tons of her stuff over the years that have been sort of passed my way. Like, hey, this is great stuff. You should read this. So no, it was cool to finally meet her and put a face to the name.
Yeah. Without further ado, let's hop into it.
Alrighty, guys, and joining us today is former Onward State managing editor and current reporter for The Athletic, covering the Carolina Hurricanes of the NHL, Sara Civian. Sarah, how you doing?
Hi, I'm awesome. Thanks for having me. I miss these days. I was reminiscing on it all day.
Gotcha. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I think what we're going to start going into first is real quick, sort of your experience with OS and everything. So did you always know that you wanted to cover hockey? Like, when did you make that sort of, decision from, just writing sports to wanting to focus on hockey?
That's a weird question. Sometimes I don't know how to perfectly answer it. I always loved hockey. I played growing up. I always loved writing, but I went into college being a history major, thinking I was going to be like, I don't know, a history professor or something like that. And then I followed the Bruins and kind of wrote about them for SB Nation, just as something to do to stay connected to Boston, because I'm from Boston and I missed it a lot. So I did that. And then I was always on Twitter, and there was Penn State Twitter back in 2012. Twitter was a different place. It's just a lot of niche communities and inside jokes and stuff. So I had a few friends on Penn State Twitter that were Onward State writers that didn't even do sports, and they kind of brought me around a little bit. And during that, I was going to hockey games and stuff. And then I auditioned for Onward State at some point, and I didn't know if I wanted to do just sport. The thing I love actually to this day about Onward State is that nobody can really get away with doing just sports, right? It's you have to do a little bit of everything, and then you learn what you want to do and what, I don't know if it's changed, but kind of I did a little bit of music. I did random politics stuff, and I always wanted to do hockey though, especially because it was when the team was going from club to D1 at Penn State, and I loved learning about kind of the inner workings. And I remember thinking, well, it was stuff that wasn't a feature about a game, or it was the dynamics of getting everything approved to have a D1 hockey team. I remember just kind of being wow, I'd love to write about hockey for the rest of my life, just because it's so interesting other than just on ice stuff. And then here we are, I guess.
Yeah, so moving forward, obviously you left Penn State after covering hockey for Onward State here. How did you really land this job with the Athletic, and how did it come about that Carolina Hurricanes would be your team?
It was obviously a journey. I got a job. I dropped out of college to take a job in Pittsburgh, and that you can read about it on Deadspin, didn't exactly pan out. But I loved that. When things were going south, my dad kind of just called me and was you're coming home. You'll be fine. You know how to write. You have a home here. Just go start from scratch. So I actually loved that I did that, because it kind of gave me more of a feeling I did this more myself than without anybody's help, even though a bunch of people helped me, but still. But so then I started doing college hockey in Boston and covering the Bruins on a freelance basis, and learning kind of how to freelance and ask for your money when you're freelancing, which is something they don't teach you in college, which they should. But I was just kind of grinding in Boston for a few months, and then I get a call. It was about to be my second season with the Bruins for WEEI, which is a radio station in Boston. That's very, they would make fun of it's Boston. They'd make fun of my articles on the air, and I'm their writer. So whatever, it was a tough crowd, but you learn a lot. So I get a call that's from Craig Custance, who's the editor-in-chief of the Athletic, and he's kind of like, we keep seeing your name pop up as somebody who might be a good fit for like a young team on the rise, but you're gonna have to leave Boston. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason I left in the first place. Like, let's go. And then I talked to like the PR of the Canes, and they were kind of selling it to me. And it's not that it's like, oh, it's going to be a good team, but it's kind of like I would travel on their plane, and I'd be able to like meet the guys and get to know them to write the stories that I wanted to write, which isn't, like I said, like post-game stuff. It's like about their lives and their families and like their hopes and dreams and stuff, and try to connect to them with the fans. So that was a perfect fit for me.
So I guess kind of, going from covering collegiate hockey to then kind of jumping to freelancing for Boston and then being a beat writer for the Canes, what is something that you think is the most rewarding about this journey and about the experience of covering NHL hockey?
I definitely connecting with the fans and kind of humanizing the whole experience, and giving people something to look forward to when they, I don't know, get off work, like something fun to read or something inspiring that makes them think.
You've covered hockey at sort of a lot of different levels so far. What's sort of the differences between covering hockey at, the collegiate level with Penn State and sort of the other colleges that you covered in Boston area to now jumping to the professional level?
Good question. I mean, it's a little bit different everywhere, and it all depends on who the people are and whatever, but it's funny because somewhere like Boston, you're kind of more general because like everybody in America that likes hockey is going to read it. But when you're somewhere like Carolina, you get more specific because you have fans that are closer to the Canes. And then it's kind of like the same as it was with college hockey, right? Where like you can get really, really specific, and then you have like a diehard following of people that it's not a million people, but they really care about your writing and you as a person and the team. And they're going to read everything you write. And then it's like in more general terms with the Bruins, it's like it's a lot of nameless faces, but there's pros and cons to both of that.
You've spoken about it before, just about being a woman in this industry, and what advice do you have for college students that are interested in getting into this field, such as Acacia, that are going to deal with sexism throughout their career, and how does that really affect you in your day-to-day operations? It's
affected me a lot in the past, and I hate the answer that you want to get a thick skin, because it's not acceptable, and it's not on us we shouldn't be the ones that have to, like, the onus is on us to respond or to not respond. These people just should go away. But while they're here, my therapist said something I'll never forget. Don't let their perception of you become your perception of you. Like, these people don't know you, and they're saying random things because they want your job, and you've invaded a space that they believed they were entitled to, which is not true, but that's what they think. And they have unprecedented access to you on Twitter, where they can say whatever they want to you, but it's not, they know that, and they're trying to get in your head and get you mad. But don't let that mess up your day, and only pay attention to the advice of people that are as successful as you or more successful as you, or your editor or your parents. You know what I mean? Like, people that know you.
One thing that I really admire about you is on Twitter, you're very candid and you're very honest, and you don't hold back, even with, all the difficulties, like Brungo mentioned, like with all these people kind of coming at you on Twitter, you kind of haven't let it, I guess, dim the way that you approach social media, or at least in my view. So kind of, have you always been like this, or is this kind of something where over your career you kind of developed this, I guess almost skill of being so candid and honest on all these platforms?
Oh yeah, no, I have always been like that. I think it's, like I said, I found Penn State Twitter, and that's how I even got into journalism. So it was always Twitter first for me. And that's always, unfortunately, sometimes I couldn't change it if I tried. Like, I'm just going to be that person. Nothing is going to faze me. I've had a stalker before. I can't shut the fuck up on Twitter. I'm sorry, I swear, but it's just not in the cards for me.
Yeah. So I guess what sort of changes do you think could possibly be made both in, the media industry and just, sports in general, to make it a more equal playing field when it comes to gender, making sure that women have, the same opportunities that men have, and to sort of limit the amount of, vitriol that gets slung?
That's a good question. And I've talked about it. I know Gord Miller, who works for TSN, and I'm pretty friendly with him, had a situation where he kind of he didn't even come out against Barstool, but he was just kind of like, I like the guys on Spit and Chicklets, but I'm not going to go on the podcast or something. And that started like a revolution. And he kind of was like, well, they're misogynistic or something like that. And doing that helps. And he's like the first one to ever do that in hockey media. But I like, colleagues sometimes will DM me after I get hate and be like, hey, I'm really sorry about that. Keep doing your thing. And I'm like, okay, like tweet that then. Make this an uncomfortable space for people that are sick in the head, right? Instead of letting them run around because you want to appear like a lot of people are cowards, right? And like they want to appear neutral or appear like a good guy or something. And it's like, you need to speak up more if you actually respect us and want us to be here.
In your job, you work with a lot of high profile athletes and stuff. So how do you, balance this, like, oh, these people are very successful and they're very famous, and, your professionalism? And do you ever get starstruck around any of those players?
No. Maybe if it was like LeBron. I remember I was covering the Celtics for a few weeks and I almost passed out when I was next to LeBron, but like, it's not these, no offense to hockey players, but like they aren't very highly marketed. I'm not. And you learn that they're just people. I think being on the Hurricanes plane for 2 seasons really helped me with that too. Because one time the plane was, we had to do an emergency landing and everyone was running around and I'm like, all right, we're all people. Like, I don't know. Hopefully we survive this. But it was a very humanizing moment for me where I'm like, all right, I'm not scared. What are they going to do? Get mad at me? And then we talk it out? Like, it's not, and they don't. Like, it's just not a big deal.
You have any other like big moments that occurred at some point? Like any times you're around like an athlete or somebody that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm like right next to them,
Well, one time in Florida, because Bobby Orr, I guess, has a house there. He was there at the Hurricanes game and I couldn't even walk in the same room. I was like, I'm not mentally prepared for this. He's my favorite player of all time. I'm like, I gotta go. And I just like went away where other people are like, the Hurricane staff was getting autographs from him. I'm like, so that is larger than life.
Obviously, like you still keep up with the team and stuff like that, it seems. I know an article about them, I believe it was last year when all the COVID stuff happened and their postseason was canceled. But what's your favorite memory of covering the team? Or do you have any fun stories that you want to share with us kind of working with the team?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's just that 2017 round, there were a lot of special guys. I know my dad got really sick that year and it was like during the whole run. And then on my last day, they all signed a jersey and gave it to me. And they were like, thanks for your coverage and stuff. And it was just, they were a special group of guys who really cared about each other, Penn State, the team. And it was special to see them kind of go on a Cinderella run knowing they were such good people. I think that's kind of a reason I've wanted to do hockey coverage forever now too, is because like I love being able to give good people props.
Yeah, so you were here actually at a very cool time, when they were kind of transitioning, like you mentioned, from that club team to the D1, top 10 program that they are now. So what was it like to, kind of be here covering that team during that time where it was, they got this brand new stadium, but they weren't necessarily supposed to be like the best team right off the bat?
Yeah, it was really interesting because you could see like shades of the team being good in the future. They obviously, nobody expected them to be right there yet, and it took hard work, but like watching a team build itself up was awesome. And knowing like Tommy Olchuk and like good personality, knowing it's like guys with the personality that kind of set a precedent for others, and seeing that precedent kind of trickle down, and then they make the playoffs because of the combination of good recruiting and skill and that same old personality. And Guy Gadowski, just like he turned so many programs around, and you talk to that guy and you're fired up, and like he's an excellent coach. So that's been cool.
Yeah, no, one of the stories that I remember hearing a lot about when I first joined OS was that one column you wrote, Penn State ruined college hockey. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that story, a tiny bit, and the impetus for you writing it?
Yeah, it was awesome. I love like the underdog heel WWE type situation. Like I had seen a lot on Twitter, like a lot of things start on Twitter, I guess, but I'd seen a lot how they broke up the Big Ten, being a hockey conference, started with Penn State because they had to break up like lifelong rivalries and divisions, and everybody was pissed about it, but it was about a TV deal, obviously. But like, and I get why people were pissed about it, because it's like they got married at these games with Michigan teams or whatever it was, and like they have long histories, and Penn State was starting its own history, but they'd always say Penn State ruined college hockey because of the tradition was gone. But I'm like, why can't we just start our own traditions? And the boys loved that they thought that everybody thought Penn State ruined college hockey, because they're like, all right, let's just ruin it a little bit more. And it was like, that became, I love when there's like a slogan people have and they run, it's like a bunch of jerks in Carolina. Like, it was so funny that happened after I covered Penn State ruined college hockey. Like, I just love owning the hate, you know.
So again, kind of, seeing this timeline develop as Penn State hockey kind of came from, I wouldn't say nothing, but in terms of how people look at them, definitely as close to nothing as they might have, gotten from going from just a club team to, the great place they're at now. How was it like seeing that program grow and develop over the last decade? Kind of like you were covering them as they were coming up, but also, you were coming up as a writer, right? So kind of you're both almost on the same trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was definitely exciting. And I noticed the parallels there, especially in retrospect. It's the first thing you obviously think of is it's crazy what money can do, right? Because Pegula put so much money into it, and the Roar Zone and Pegula Ice Arena is like just still to this day, I know I'm biased, but like top 3 favorite rink for me. And I've been to all the NHL rinks, yeah, and I still love Pegula. I think like steep college section, but the student section, oh my god, I'm like so old now, I forget what that even is called. But it's steep on purpose, like all the little details. I think the attention to detail is what strikes me the most. And now they get the turnover, I guess that's just what happens, right? When it's like you finally get recruits, they're going to leave in 2 years to go to the NHL. Like when you get NHL prospects, and it's like that was what they were struggling with this year. But you just got to find a way to keep the balance between being Penn State hockey and knowing that it's good to get talent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think another good article of yours from your time at OS that I think really mirrors that journey that, both you and the team were undertaking at the same time was what number 10 Penn State hockey gave to me, that you wrote as a sort of like, reflection, I guess, of your time covering the team. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I know exactly what article you're talking about, and that kind of brings back some memories of like, I know when I look back, sometimes I cringe at some things that I wrote, but at the same time, it's like, I have that spirit today, I think, where I'm just kind of honest and talking, like it's like my diary kind of like to some, and I know like that gives me kind of a connection with fans and stuff, I think, and it's not usual. And sometimes I get hate for like being so honest about stuff, but I think, I don't know, I like showing a little personality and kind of hoping it resonates with other people, you know what I mean?
So you mentioned a little bit the turnover that is taking place now that kind of they're into this. They've been here for 4 years. Now the guys, we saw like 6 players go to the NHL last year. So what really would be the best pitch to get recruits to come to Penn State? You mentioned the student section and the amazing facilities we have, but what's the main lure to Penn State for recruits now?
Yeah, the student section and Pegula, and it's like that's just the most professional rink, and that means a lot. But also like the surge of the Big Ten, like that's one of the best conferences in college hockey now, and getting to go to Penn State and getting a Penn State education and having a little fun at Penn State, and Guy Gadowski and the whole coaching staff is excellent. So I think it's a lot of combinations of little things.
So obviously a lot of players, as Brungo just touched on, left to go to the NHL last year and start their professional careers. So there's been this huge influx of like these, new guys into the program. And obviously with this whole COVID situation, they've kind of had a bit of a crazy, start to their season. Have you had a chance to kind of watch any of their games and kind of follow the team at all this season in any capacity?
Yeah, I've watched a few. I haven't been as up on it as I'd like to because I can barely do my own work right now. I feel like the NHL has a game every day. But yeah, Kevin Wall is a prospect of the Canes, and I am friendly with him, and I know that like he's having such a good season, and I was kind of trying to keep up on that. And yeah, obviously to me it looked like growing pains of a team where it's like you have to adjust to losing all your star prospects, and it's as simple as that to me. And COVID, like it's just this whole season is, I'm glad that players got to play it, but it's at the same time you can't really take too much stock into it.
Yeah, so talking about COVID again, what have you seen from the NHL when it comes to COVID regulations, and how has it really flipped the game around?
Yeah, it's tough. I talked to Rod Brindamore, the Hurricanes head coach, about it a lot because it's just kind of like you preach being close as a team and you preach like doing all this stuff and all, and that's what the Hurricanes were kind of founded on and all their success. Like they're very close and love each other, and like the storm surge and stuff. Clearly, like you don't do that if you hate each other. But they don't get to do that, and as like they trade people like and they want to bring them into Hurricanes culture, it's hard to maneuver that when you can't really do anything. They're obviously so grateful to be playing hockey, but it's like it's a big cost. Like they don't really get to hang out and bond as a team, and then they're playing so many games that the like chance you're going to get injured is higher, and it's just kind of, it's not ideal, of course, but it is what it is.
I'm just curious what your take is on top 5 players of all time, because you did mention Bobby Orr earlier.
Gretzky is the best. I would say Bobby Orr is in the top 5. I'm not going to rank them 1 through 5, but Bobby Orr is up there. I think we'll see Connor McDavid. It's just hard because then you go through eras in the dead puck era, and then you look at like goaltending and how it's changed. They barely wore masks like 15 years ago, you know what I mean? So it's so much harder these days, and I think Connor McDavid's going to be in the top 5. McDavid or Gretzky. That's what I'm going with for now. That's my top 3.
What about 87?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
This crazy guy thinks Crosby's the greatest hockey player of all time.
I think he's the greatest.
Wow, probably because you're from Pittsburgh. No, he's awesome.
Unbiased greatest.
No, he's got to be in the top 5 conversation. I don't know. I'd have to look at, that's the thing though. I have to look at every era, but I feel like I always over exaggerate the era that I grew up in, aka the Crosby era, right? So my first instinct is to say him, and then my second is to say not him. But in all objective reality, he's definitely top 7 at least.
See, my Philly heritage, genetically makes me predisposition to ignoring any sort of greatness that Crosby or Malkin or any of those guys exude. So, he's a wimp, whatever, who cares?
I'll take that. Crosby is just so consistent. Like he's been so consistently great for all these years that just has to count for something.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up too. Did you ever have any players that inspired you at any point? Like the ones that you were a fan of growing up, maybe that affected your love for hockey? I know for me, I'm not as much into hockey as I was when I was younger. I was way more into hockey. I remember I took ice skating lessons so I could play and everything. I never actually got to play, but I ended up learning how to ice skate out of it. So I got that out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Chara. Wait, keep going.
I was going to say, I remember reading a biography about Patrick Waugh when I was a kid. It was the one that's written by his dad. That's a great book. Highly recommend to any listeners. But I remember being really inspired by that as well. Yeah,
no, Chara, growing up in Boston, and I was a defenseman, but I'm 5'2", so we have a few differences, but it was surreal. I'm so glad I got to do this, even though it's part of the reason why I went to Carolina, because there were younger players that I didn't idolize, so I could be more objective about. But I'm so glad I got to cover Chara for a quick amount of time. We only ever had one interaction because I was so nervous, but I got there before all the cameras got there, and I was the first one in the interview scrum, and he turns to me and he goes, "I think we're going to be on TV," sarcastically. And I was like, "Are you joking around with me?" What? I probably looked confused him so much, but that was kind of a point where I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to be an actual reporter.
Yeah, and then you've covered, sorry, Acacia, go for it.
No, you can go first.
Gotcha. One thing I'm curious about too is you've covered, the NHL, the NBA, college sports as well. What differences have you noticed like between sports? Like is how different is covering basketball than covering hockey? I mean, they're different
Oh my God.
sports, obviously, but
It's so different. And I lament this all the time. And like me and my friend Dom, oh my God, I can't pronounce his last name. He's the stats guy at the Athletic who has the crazy last name. But we're like the younger people that work at the Athletic, and we always want to do like our counterparts at the Athletic NBA do like a fit check every week where it's like the best outfits of the NBA. And it's like, that's a huge part of NBA culture, but we can't do that because they just wear suits. Like it's something like that. And it's like the cultures surrounding, this is what has been kind of difficult too, is that even in social justice and socialist, obviously the NHL is a very white sport. There's not many Black players, and obviously Black players in the NBA are more predisposed to speak out about issues in their own community. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to, I sometimes wish the NHL players would speak out about these things without us having to kind of ask them about it. And they've gotten better, obviously, but it's still like, it's so ingrained in them to be team first. Don't rattle the boat, don't rattle anybody, like just head down and be quiet. So the difference between that and that is also because of the superstars in the NBA. There's no real superstars in the NHL. Yeah, I can go on about this, but there's a lot of differences, and some are good and some are bad. Like no one's ever gonna rip me to shreds, and it's easy to ask these guys questions and they're gonna be polite. Whereas in the NBA, they might challenge you more, but there's pros and cons. And I love NHL players, obviously, like I love the sport, love the league, but I would like to see a little more outspokenness.
I've been really lucky to work with some of the older Penn State players like Luke Yuha, Tommy Olchuk, all these guys. And they're all very personable. They're all very nice guys. And obviously, this. And I've just, been so lucky to work with a program that has so many amazing, polite people. Have any of your interactions with any, players, not even just at Penn State, but professionally really stuck out to you? Or have you had an interaction with a player that, meant a lot to you?
It was the day after the hurricane season. One of them, who isn't a Cane anymore, kind of came up to me and was like, I just want you to know, like, you're really respected in the locker room. Like, there's never been a bad word said about you. And I was like, that's really nice to hear. We weren't even like talking about that, but it was just like, you did great this season, whatever. I was like, thank you so much.
That's really awesome to hear. That's great.
Yeah, no, and there's never been, and when we talk about sexism with this job, a lot of times you have to remember what calms me down sometimes. I've never had a problem with a player or a coach or anything like that. It's always just some idiot on Twitter with 3 followers, like, for the most part.
So in general, how do you think Onward State, your experiences with the blog, prepare you for the professional world? What skills did it allow you to develop?
Oh my God, everything. I would never be where I am right now without Onward State. Just balancing work life too, because like in being a good person with good friends, it like that the blog really helped me with that. And also just knowing that it's okay to not do what everybody else is doing, because now at the Athletic, I'm doing the exact same thing where I am encouraged to go off the beaten path and write that weird story, or like speak my mind, instead of like a traditional newspaper upbringing where you're like, that would never work for me. And I'm learning that that's okay. Like there's a place for like Onward Statey people in the professional world.
Awesome. Well, once again, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this going live.
Yeah, there you have it. Great conversation with Athletic Carolina Hurricanes beat writer Sara Civian, also known as Civ to us OS folk. Really cool conversation. She touched on a lot of things beyond hockey and beyond her job, which I think was really cool and really important, especially for young girls and women that are interested in getting into the sports industry, sports media. So she's definitely succeeded in that.
Still touching on hockey and everything and her experience covering the Penn State men's ice hockey team, but still great to get her insight, as a professional in that industry, sort of her own, views and experiences, as a woman in that industry.
Yeah, without a doubt. So once again, thank you to Sarah for coming on. Thanks again to Acacia for guest hosting this episode. Her second time on the pod. Very smart hockey mind and great conversation. So it's been another episode of Podward State. My name is Samuel Brungo.
Matt Paolizzi.
Take it easy, guys. Enjoy the rest
See
of your
ya.
day or night or whenever you're listening. Be safe.